Thanks everyone for coming out. And my goal tonight is to talk about 5 essential gardening skills that I think all gardeners in northern Wisconsin should have, and hopefully make you all a bit more sophisticated as gardeners. Essential skill number 1, and I brought a prop, is drip irrigation. So I just wanted to walk you through essential components of a drip irrigation system, because you can set this up whether you've got an acre garden or 100 square feet, and it's only going to cost you probably less than $100 by the time you're done for an average-sized garden. The concept here is once you get it set up in the spring, you just leave it. And then the way you water is you just turn on your spigot and you're done. And it just slowly, you might run it for an hour every day, and that's all it takes. So you save a lot of water because you're not doing this and evaporating half of it. You keep the leaves drier, and you actually deliver water exactly where the plants need it at the root system. Number 2 is soil structure and learning how to be a better manager of soil structure. This is a handy tool called a broad fork. Anyone have one of these? A broad fork? With our gardening, what we're trying to do is allow the soil structure to build over time. Just like if you were out in the woods, over time you get organic material falls to the surface, it decomposes, and you end up with a real defined soil structure with horizons, and you get the coffee ground feel to the soil. Those coffee grounds, or that granulation of the soil, results from biological activity, so bacteria and fungi and everything else that's working on that soil. It secretes stuff and it creates these little balls of soil. Makes it real porous so the water goes through it. It holds a lot of nutrients, and the roots have space to grow, so there's actually oxygen in that soil as well. So when we go in the spring or in the fall and just rototill it, we destroy all that soil structure. And now you're starting over from the beginning. So what we can do instead is you use a broad fork just to loosen the soil in the spring. So you jump on this thing, get it nice and deep, and you just pull back. You're not trying to turn it over. You're just trying to loosen it up. All right, so skill number 3 is season extension, right? Anyone live in an area with a short growing season? So there's probably a lot of these you're already using, but one would be the raised bed and permanent raised beds in your garden. And you don't necessarily have to use wood to create those raised beds. You can just mound that soil up and do a good 4 foot wide so you're not always fighting the edge of that bed, and just keep it that way. So when we get to that reduced tillage approach, all you're ever doing is just gently working up those raised beds. So when you raise the bed up, you expose it more to the sun, and so it warms up faster. And anything you can do to warm that soil up faster, seeds germinate better, everything grows a little bit faster. So that's the easy part, just raised beds. The second is this idea of a low tunnel. And if you get a chance to take a look at Elliot Coleman's work and his books, he gives a lot of good insight on how to make use of these low tunnels. And so the low tunnels are nothing more than what it sounds like. It's a tunnel that goes over your raised bed, and you can make it as narrow as you want or as wide as you want. And these are just cheap PVC pipes. They'll last forever. You can reuse them. I think this costs about 40 cents each. Cheap husbands, right? Not a big deal. And so you make a low tunnel down the length of your bed, maybe every 4 feet or so. And you can do this in the fall and leave them in there, or you can right away as soon as the ground thaws in the spring. And then you're going to put a covering over the top. So this is just an old ratty piece of it, but this is called floating row cover, sometimes called remay. It's just a polyspun fiber or a fabric, and this is what would cover that low tunnel. So you'd buy a sheet of it, the length of your bed, and as wide as you need it to be. Usually it's sold in 6 feet wide and however long you want it. You lay it over the top of those hoops, and then these paper clip things, you just fasten it to the clip at the bottom and the top, and it'll hold tight. The fourth, most likely you're under-fertilizing your plants. So we're going to go through, here's your trivia question. So when we talk about fertilizing, we want to know what the crop nutrient need is, or what the plant nutrient is. So if you're trying to grow a crop of sweet corn, how much nitrogen does that sweet corn need over the course of the year? I'm going to tell you it's 120 pounds of actual nitrogen per acre per year. So on those real hungry crops, knowing what you're adding or what needs to be added is really an essential garden skill to grow good vegetables. All right, so that was skill number 4. Skill number 5 is the ability to eat currants and like them. So the reason why it would be great to grow currants is they're so easy to grow, right? They're so easy to grow in our region in the north because they can handle the really cold winters. And the number one thing about them, the deer don't eat them.
Is there anything that you can plant in the fall that will come up in the spring?
Parsnips planting at any time during the summer, letting them overwinter, and then some people say the sweetest parsnips are when they overwinter and you harvest in the spring. But they do most of their growth in the summer and fall, and you're just holding them over the winter and harvesting them in the spring. You can overwinter a lot of things like that. Carrots too. They're not growing, but they overwinter in the soil, and then you can pick them and eat them in that following spring.
What should you be adding to a garden every year?
Yeah, the number one thing to add to your garden every year is compost. And as well rotted, it should look like coffee grounds. You shouldn't be able to recognize the banana peel or the eggshell or orange peel that's in it, right? Should be well rotted. It's hard to find, actually, because if you're making your own compost pile, it sounds good, but the reality is you start with a mountain and you get about that much compost, right? So that's why it's hard to find, and so anything you can do with your city that takes all the grass clippings or leaves and it's rotted down, that's what you're trying to find. Or if you can find somebody that runs a tree care company that composts their wood chips, but it's hard to find, but that's the best thing that you can add.
We have trouble breaking down like kitchen compost. It just doesn't get hot enough. Do you have any tips for that?
It's a challenge because we usually don't have enough materials. So kitchen scraps, every time you add kitchen scraps, you're going to have to add something brown along with it. So we talk about greens and browns, and you want roughly an even mixture. So that means you're going to have, stockpiled browns of straw bale or some leaves. Get it mixed in every time you add a bucket of your kitchen scraps. You add some of this, and then you mix it up. So, and you want a pile that's this big. That's why it's hard. So you're using the compost pile to break down the kitchen scraps. You're not actually making a compost pile out of kitchen scraps. You don't have enough kitchen scraps to ever do that. So that, really is the trick, to get enough volume, to get enough heat going that you break stuff down.